Our lesson this morning, you probably saw from the marquee out front, is how to have a blessed life. Several years ago, I heard for the first time this expression. As I was checking out at Target, Publix, you name it, the young black lady said, "You have a blessed day." Now, I was used to hearing, "Have a nice day," which is all right. That's pleasant. But when she said, "Have a blessed day," that made an impression on me. And really, when you go back in the Bible, the early Hebrews, the Jews, actually used an expression like that. Like, "May God be with you," or "Godspeed on your way," valedictions, and sometimes farewells would be dressed with that type of language. And I think we ought to keep it. But wouldn't it be nice to have a blessed life? I'm going to be quoting from Psalms chapter 1. Blessed. Blessed is a man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in that law he will meditate day and night. He will be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth his fruit in his season, and his leaf shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. But the ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff that the wind bloweth away. Therefore, the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. I was talking to my wife the other day about this chapter, and she said, "I remember that from my childhood." And she could quote it almost verbatim, right to the very end. And I thought that was commendable, from a childhood to still be able to quote that chapter, first chapter of the book of Psalms. Blessed. Blessed is a noun, 2 syllables. Blessed is 1 syllable, and it's a verb. But either way, it derives from the same origin. If you're reading from the Hebrew Bible, the word actually means a straight path. And it has reference to our walk with God. The Jews had a way of looking at things in black and white with no in-between. They thought the best path was a straight path, the shortest distance between 2 points, the quickest way, and the easiest way. But the crooked path is a little different. It takes longer. It's not as pleasant. You have twists and turns. Sometimes it's treacherous, and sometimes you get lost. So in reference to our walk, the Hebrews said, take the straight path, and that means the blessed path. In the Greek language, it's a little different. The word makarios, blessed, that Jesus uses in Matthew chapter 5 in the Beatitudes. Makarios is actually a Greek island to this day, a Greek island. And that island is self-sufficient, it's independent, it has all the resources without any intrusion from anyone else. Sam, they never have to leave that island to go to the mainland or any other island to get what they need. How descriptive is that of our relationship with God? We are, with God, self-sufficient. Blessed. Now I want us to look at this lesson in a different way. Every good and perfect gift is from above and comes down from the Father of lights. Now that pictures God Almighty as illuminating the entire universe. This is His domain, But every good and perfect gift comes from above. That's James 1:17. In Psalms 104, I think it's verse 28, it says, "From his hands comes everything that is good." How many of you have ever remodeled a kitchen? Sam, you have. You're into woodwork. I know Steve has because he does floor covering. What do you have to do? The first thing you have to do is tear everything out. Make the kitchen real ugly, don't you? You tear out the cabinets. You tear out the countertop. You have to rearrange the plumbing. It becomes a real mess for a while. So when the writer of Psalms here starts talking about the blessed life, blessed is the man, he starts with the negative side. Things you need to remove. For instance, let me describe it this way. In human terms, let's suppose a young man is walking down the street on his way to Bible study Wednesday night. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. Stop right there. He's walking. And there are three guys over here on the side. He's in the seedy part of town. They have the hatch up on an SUV. They're smoking pot. And they call him over. "Hey, come here. Got to show you something." Well, you're hesitant. You don't know who these guys are. They look a little shady, don't they? No, seriously. Come on over here. I want to show you something. You'll like this. Trust me. So you give in. You walk over. You take a look. Spread out in the back of that SUV are all kinds of electronics and digital phones, televisions, recording devices, and you get the idea. They didn't buy this, did they? And he's got drugs laid out as well. He's passing the joint around to everybody. Tell you what, I'll let you have anything you see here for half price. Now what are you doing? You're standing in the way of sinners. See how it makes a progression? Well, it makes a digression. You go from walking, now you're standing. You're standing in fellowship with sinners. And you're listening. You say, "I don't have any money, and I'm on my way to church." What? Look, let us buy you a beer. There's a bar right there, real handy. You go inside with him, or them. You all sit down on a stool. He buys you a drink, then another. You start getting drunk. They start talking with kind of seedy language. Some girls walk up, working girls. You know, they're not being paid to be there. Put their arms around you. Now you're sitting in the seat of the scornful. You've gone from walking to standing to sitting. Down, down, down you go. All these things need to come out of your life. That's what he's saying. The ungodly are not so. They don't know righteousness. That's got to come out. The old story about the oxen. Be not unequally yoked together with what? Unbelievers. The ungodly, the unrighteous. What is happening is, in this case, you're developing a relationship that takes you away from the straight walk of a Christian. And when it talks about sitting in the seat of the scornful, the word scornful means mockers. They would laugh at you. You're going where? You're going to church? You don't need to go to church. Have another drink. We can give you money. You can work with us. We can give you the attention of these women. We can have a good time. The writer of Psalms says you got to take all of that out of your life if you want a blessed life. Interesting passage in 1 Peter chapter 4 and verse 4. It talks about a Christian who has decided he no longer wants to give his life to sin. And then it says, they find it strange that you no longer run with them. Read it, 1 Peter 4 and 4. They find it strange that you're no longer willing to run with them. Why? Because you decided to give your life to Christ. So you can't be blessed of God while you're still living in that direction. Now let's flip it to the positive side. Then he says, but your delight is where? The law of the Lord. And in that law you meditate day and night. Delight. The word delight means this becomes your joy. This becomes the fire in your belly. This becomes your passion. And you do what? You meditate on it. I once asked an instructor, what's your take on that word meditate? He says 2 words, pause and ponder. First thing you got to do is pause. That's hard today, isn't it? We're all busy. When do you have time really to pause and look at that book? Well, we have our occasions, don't we? Mine is early in the morning. How about you, Steve? When do you do it? Early? Some people do it late. You do it at a quiet time when you can pause and reflect. But that's not enough. You also need to ponder. And by ponder, I simply mean you need to let God tell you what that passage means. Let me read something to you. I'm reading because this is a different translation. Proverbs chapter 2. You'll love this. My son, if you receive my words and treasure my commands within you, yes, if you cry out for discernment, you're asking God to tell you what he's saying. Lift up your voice for understanding. If you seek her as silver and search for her as for hidden treasures, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, and from his mouth comes knowledge and understanding. He stores up sound wisdom for the upright. He is a shield to those who walk uprightly. So to ponder simply means you dwell on that passage and you say, God, teach me. Give me understanding and enlightenment. Open those words up to me so that I understand them. And this book becomes so important to you. I believe that all of us can memorize. I do a lot of memorization. You know that. I've been doing it all my life. I do it for one reason. I want to keep my attention with the people I'm talking to. But that's not the only reason. When I memorize, I'm putting in my catalog, in my files up here, a ready reference in case I'm being tested, tempted, and tried. And that happens every day. If the old devil is after me and he's tempting me, and I need to respond to him, I don't need to run off looking for a Bible or looking for a concordance or looking for a lexicon. I want to have it right there. That's what Jesus did when he was tempted of the devil, didn't he? It is written. It is written. It is written every time. And the devil walked away, didn't he? I think if Bill Gates came down this aisle with a wheelbarrow full of $100 bills, I believe that all of us could learn to memorize. If he said, I'd give you $100 if you'll memorize one verse before next Sunday, I believe you could find the time and the initiative to do that. So it's a matter of motivation. It's important because that's part of the blessed life, to know His will, to study it, to ponder it, to memorize it. Then he says, you'll be like a tree, planted by rivers, isn't that pretty? Planted by rivers of water, that brings forth his fruit in his season. His leaf shall not wither. I've got oak trees. Deborah and I have oak trees on our property. I guess 50, maybe 100 years old. Have big branches going out 50 feet on each side. But you know what? When you got a tree like that, if it's a hardwood, if it's an oak tree, those roots go down deep, don't they, Sam? They go down deep and they spread. So when the storm comes, what happens? It's stable. It's not going to move. But we also have a lot of pine trees. Not so good. All that water we had recently, all that rain we had, and the high winds of the storms, I had two pine trees that fell over on our driveway. And son, you've been there. It's a long driveway, but we couldn't get out. Had to get the chainsaw and cut them up and move them out of the way. You don't want to be that kind of Christian that's shallow. First time a storm comes along, a trial, a test, it just blows you away. But he says, if you'll dig deep into this book and make it your life, your understanding, then you'll be like that oak tree. It says you'll bear fruit. You see an apple tree? How do you know it's an apple tree? Got an apple on it. Now think about that young man I was talking about earlier. He's in the bar with his new friends. What if he said to those guys, look, I'm not going to have another drink, but why don't you all come to church with me? They start laughing at him. Why should we come to church with you? You're just like us. Why do we need Christ? If you're the representative of Christ, we don't want it. See, fruit's important. If we're deeply, deeply into this book, we'll bear fruit, the right kind of fruit. And he says, whatever you do, you'll prosper. Anybody ever heard of a guy named Ira Yale? Back during the days of the Depression. I'm not saying you go back that far. I'm just saying that's when he lived. Back during the days of the Depression, he owned a sheep farm in Texas, West Texas. And he went to his banker because he was behind on his mortgage. The banker said, you got 30 days, we're closing you down. We're taking it all back. 30 days. Well, he was a spiritual man. He went back to his house. Somewhat despondent, he started praying about it. A week passed, nothing happened until there was a knock on the door. He went to the door. There was this well-dressed businessman. He said, Mr. Yale, he said, I represent a rather large oil company. And we have reason to believe there might be oil under your property. And we'd like permission to wildcat your land and drill. And it could be a bust, but it might make us all rich. What do you say? He didn't take long to make that decision. What does he have to lose, right? Everything to gain. Let's do it. So they started drilling. First well. It was a gusher. 82,000 barrels of oil a day. How much money is that, Steve? 82,000 barrels a day. And that was the first well. You know, some of those wells are still going today. That was in the 1930s. he became a multi-millionaire. Now, here's my question. When did he become a millionaire? When he bought the land or when they hit the gusher? I submit that it was when he bought the land, because the resources came with the purchase. He had mineral rights. He had oil rights. Turns out that there was a whole sea of oil under his land. He was rich the day he bought it. He just didn't know what was under his feet. Unto him who can do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or even imagine. Ephesians 3 and verse 20. I don't even know if that's a word, exceeding abundantly. That's an adjective and an adverb together. I know one thing, it's a divine word. God can do that. So the negative and the positive makes for the blessed life. If you want God to bless your life, you need to read Psalms 1 every day. This morning, as we think about that, if you have things in your life that you need to change, if you need to get the negative out of your life and spend more time with the book and come to Christ, walk the straight way, let us help you do that. If you need to obey the gospel or come back to him, while together we stand and sing.
What shall we do? So he answered, "Do not fear, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And Elisha prayed and said, "Lord, I pray, open his eyes that he may see." Then the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. There's help out there that we don't see. And then Solomon was told by God, "If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land." And then Peter wrote, "Therefore humble yourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, the devil, walks about like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Resist him, steadfast in the faith, knowing that the same sufferings are experienced by your brotherhood in the world. But may the God of all grace, who called us to his eternal glory by Christ Jesus, after you have suffered a while, perfect, establish, strengthen, and settle you. To him be the glory and the dominion forever and ever. Amen." Chris, close the prayer. Rebella, would you just close the prayer?
Lord, we thank you for this beautiful day of life you've given us. We thank you for coming to church today. And we thank you for the little service that we had. And Lord, in some sense, we thank you for the virus. I know that there's a lot of people looking at you now. And let these people realize that you are with them in bad times, but you are with them in great times. And how much better the good times will be with you. Strengthen them, Lord, and help them realize your greatness. Help us to be the good teachers and examples to those who are going back to you. Lord, be with those our members that are traveling. Be with those of our members that are not here. Be with those that are sick. Be with our families, wherever they may be at. Protect them. Lord, we do love you, and we know you know what's best. And we trust you, we love you. Be with us all week. Help us not to forget you tonight. Help us not to forget you Wednesday. Help us not to forget you anytime. Always keep you first. And just be with all our members.
to and from home in the apartments that I might be working